Welcome, everyone, to the 2025 Western Connecticut UFO Conference. Thank you for being with us today. My name is Aurelia Maraca. I am the technology coordinator here at the Danbury Library, and I welcome you on behalf of the Friends of the Danbury Library. Tonight we have author and researcher Linda Zimmermann, and she's going to be talking about the Great Blackout of 1965, which I have no idea about, but Linda always presents an amazing, well worthwhile presentation. So we're so happy that she's here to kick off the UFO conference for the Western Connecticut UFO conference at the Danbury Library. Thank you, Linda. The com is yours.
Thank you. And thank you, Aurelio, for, excuse me, all the work you do. There would be no conference without you. So you always come up with such great graphics. And, you came up with the Unraveling the High Strangeness line. So kudos to you for that.
I try.
So, yeah. So a lot of people never even heard of the blackout of 65. If you're not old enough, it's ancient history. If you're old enough, you probably have some interesting stories. And I always knew there were UFOs involved, but until a couple of years ago when I really started looking into it, I had no idea the depth of the high strangeness. So let's jump in. And why am I not? Hold on. I'm trying to there we go. Okay. Marbles. What does that have to do with anything? My memory of the Great Blackout was I was a little kid. My brother and I are playing on the living room floor with a coffee can of my dad's marbles. I still have them. This is an actual photo of the actual marbles. And I don't know what happened, but we knocked over the can. They went spreading all over the floor, and at that moment, the lights went out. My mother was not happy that it was pitch black and the floor was covered in marbles. We eventually picked them all up with flashlights and candles. Uh, the event occurred Tuesday, November 9th, 1965, and it was kind of a rolling blackout throughout this area. The first power outage was 5:17, and by 5:28, basically everything you see in red here was completely black. 30 million people were in darkness. In some areas, the blackout lasted 13 hours. And in New York City, close to 1 million people were trapped in elevators and subways. Can you imagine being trapped in a crowded elevator for 13 hours? That's a horror movie. So my dad was working in Connecticut at the time and trying to get home to Rockland County, New York. There were no traffic lights. There were no street lights. So you can imagine traffic was snarled everywhere. Took him a long time to get home. I remember that. And he had some stories of all the crazy drivers. And then everybody that night ate by candlelight. If you had a gas stove, which we did, I think my mother made spaghetti or something. But if you had an electric stove, you probably had crackers. So I thought this was very exotic to me. I mean, how exciting, dining by candlelight, lights out, all of that. Um, so that's my memory of it. A year later, this is popular mechanics. You can't get more conventional, more technical than popular mechanics. And 1 year later, look at the headline they had. Did flying saucers cause the blackout? This is remarkable for for popular mechanics to have this because some people, actually a lot of people, were saying that UFOs caused it. and we'll get into those sightings. This is an illustration just 2 months earlier in September in Exeter, New Hampshire. There was a big sighting. If you look up the Exeter incident, police, civilians saw these craft, and they were near power lines. And so the the supposition was, well, they cause electromagnetic effects. Cars stall, radios, get all staticky. Could they have gotten too close to power points, power plants, and caused this? So here's the official explanation. Official explanation number one. A faulty relay switch was overloaded in a power station by Syracuse, New York, causing cascading failures throughout the grid. And then somebody said, "Yeah, we don't want to blame it on us. Let's blame it on the Canadians." So then the official explanation number two, it was a faulty relay switch at the Sir Adam Beck power station in Canada, causing a failure of cascading throughout the system. The problem is the next day or within 13 hours, the power was restored using all the supposedly damaged parts. And if the parts were broken, shouldn't they have to have been replaced? Nobody ever quite explained that. So if you had a electrical object and it blew a fuse, your Christmas lights, you blew a fuse, it won't work till you replace that fuse. Yet these supposedly damaged parts weren't replaced and the power came back on. Isn't that interesting? So here's an illustration from the time of the power lines going from Niagara Falls. You see up here by the lake, these big lines go to Syracuse from upstate New York, also to Syracuse, and then the main power line coming down to New York City. So what was happening around that time? Well, uh, this is, I have to move my little pane over here. Okay. Um, this red circle here is, I believe this is pronounced Tidiute, Pennsylvania. That's a new one on me. Just an hour before the power went out, commercial pilots Jerry Whittaker and George Kroneger were flying in Whittaker's plane. They radio in to say they are watching two shiny discs, which were being chased by military jets. And with a sudden burst of speed, they took off, and the military jets were essentially left in the dust. So, craft that are going extremely fast an hour before certainly had time to get to the Niagara Falls or Syracuse area. But even if this is something totally different, point being, major sighting just an hour before. In Syracuse itself, there was a man by the name of Renato Pacini. Kind of sounds like a type of pasta, but he was an Italian orchestra conductor, and he and his wife had just landed at Syracuse Airport. And his two brothers who were both engineers, and their wives came to pick them up. And as they're leaving the airport, they see a very, very bright light. They described it as kind of a sinking motion. It was slowly, it took several minutes, heading down to the town of Syracuse. And when it got low enough and they lost sight of it, it was basically right in the town. That's when the power went out. Okay? Doesn't sound like a faulty switch to me doing something like that. So then there is this man. Um, He is Assistant Aviation Commissioner Robert Walsh. He was flying over airfield in Syracuse at the time, 1,500 feet over Hancock Field, and the lights went out. Can you imagine you're in a small plane and suddenly the whole ground goes dark? He didn't know what happened. Was it sabotage? Was there war? Very disconcerting. Fortunately, he was able to land, and he and his friends are standing on the runway talking about, what's happened? What do you think's going on? And they all witness a massive, what they describe as a fireball. It was 100 feet in the air and about 150 feet in diameter. Okay, so we have Renato Pacini and his family seeing some sort of light sinking towards Syracuse. We have the aviation commissioner and all these other pilots seeing this fireball. You can see it here. He has a picture of him. I found a newspaper clipping describing it. At the same time, also in the air was a flight instructor, Weldon Ross, and his student, James Brooking. So they are looking down and they see towards Syracuse, they see a glowing red hot globe. And where do they see it? Over the power lines leading to the Niagara power plant. This is just very fascinating, if this was a crime, you would say, all right, we have this witness seeing this, we have this witness. We're building a very good case that I think we could bring to court. And again, authorities can only guess at the ball of fire. Somebody actually photographed it. On the right here, these are pictures someone took. They're blurry and streaked, but clearly there was some bright, fiery looking object in the sky, the flying fireballs. This man on the left was able to look at it through a telescope and saw all kinds of details as if it was a, solid object. And over 100 reports were filed. Now, today and in recent times, it's estimated that maybe 1 in 100 people actually report their sighting. So if we do 100 times 100, were there 10,000 witnesses? Again, the official excuse was that a local dump was burning garbage. Okay. Yeah, because burning garbage flies through the air like a fireball. So the two nearby dumps, the superintendents were contacted, and they both said, yeah, no, nobody was burning garbage. The guy on duty closed up and went home before this even happened. And the other one said, no, no burning garbage. So much for that excuse. So clearly in Syracuse, there were lights, there were fiery looking objects seen around the airport, around the town, and most importantly, directly over the power lines, right right as the power was about to go out. Okay. This is the Sir Adam Beck, one of the Sir Adam Beck power plants. I had to look him up because I didn't know who the heck Sir Adam Beck was. He was the man who started the Canadian Hydroelectric Power Plant Commission, excuse me. Now, this plant and others, I think you can see Niagara Falls in the upper left. I think the if you've ever been there, it kicks up all that mist. I think that's so you can see where it's located. Um, many lights were seen over the power plant right before the power went out again. Now, this is some of the comments by the people who worked at the power plant. They saw round glowing objects. There was a sudden surge of power. This one man described it. One of the technicians, he said, the supervisor actually said, it was a tidal wave of power, 1.1 million kilowatts. I looked up what can you power with 1 million kilowatts? Well, you can power 1 million modern homes for an hour. That's an enormous amount of power. Power just doesn't suddenly generate. It has to come from somewhere. You don't just suddenly, oh, look at that. We have 1 million extra kilowatts. Well, I wonder where that came from. So there was this incredible surge of power, which was described as being inexplicable. You just can't pull power out of the air unless it's coming from a UFO. So the supervising engineer, Jim Harris, said, it's incredible. I would have said it was impossible if I hadn't seen the evidence. So you've got to love the Canadian power authorities. Denied, denied, denied. No, there were no strange lights by the generating stations. No, there was nothing. It's just a fake story, nothing. So many, many, many reports of strange lights were coming out in the newspapers and being made public. So then they had to change their story. Okay, so maybe there were a lot of strange lights by the generating stations, but they had nothing to do with the blackout. So you can judge for yourself who's telling the truth here. So both at Syracuse and at the Canadian power stations, UFOs all over the place, and then the power goes out. So clearly there seems to be, it seems to be a much more than a coincidence. Okay. Dr. James McDonald, a senior atmospheric physicist at the University of Arizona, great scientist, serious scientist, um, but he studied UFOs as well, which, he got such ridicule. It just it was horrible. They tried to destroy him and his credibility because he dared to mention UFOs. In 1967, June 7th, he actually addressed the United Nations, and one of the things he said was he believed UFOs were the number one scientific problem. That's a huge statement for such a prestigious scientist. And as I said, he took a lot of flack for that. The following year, 1968, he addressed Congress, the House Committee on Science. And he said that there could be, he didn't say it was definite, but he suggested there was a link between power failures and UFOs, including the Great Blackout. He said even the famous one, the New York Blackout, involved UFO sightings. He said Dr. Hynek would probably be the most, that's J. Allen Hynek, head of Blue Book, would probably be the most appropriate man to describe the Manhattan sightings since he interviewed several witnesses involved. I would love to find out if Dr. Hynek's reports still exist on that somewhere, hopefully. Um, but McDonald said he interviewed a woman in Seacliff, New York, who saw a disc hovering and going up and down, then shooting away from New York just after the power failure. Again, now we're in southern New York State, by New York City. All of these people are seeing UFOs just before and after the power failure. So he had all these reports, he had all this evidence, and he said, I went to the Federal Power Commission for data. They didn't take them seriously, although they had many dozens of sightings reports that famous evening. Here's the big statement from Dr. McDonald. There were reports all over New England in the midst of that blackout. So now we have them New York, Canada, and all over New England. And this is coming from a physicist. Okay, locally to me, I've talked about Pine Bush before. It's called the UFO capital of the Northeast. Well, the night of the blackout in 1965, a teacher was driving up through Circleville and Bullville, Thompson's Ridge to Pine Bush for a parent teachers conference that night. And he said, as he was approaching Pine Bush, he saw a blue ball of light he described arcing through the sky, going from cloud to cloud. Um, and once he got to the school, of course, all the power is out. And he's about to tell people about the big blue ball of light he saw. And a couple of teachers there start telling him about what they saw back in Middletown. Apparently, a disc, a flying saucer, whatever you want to call it, was hovering directly over the train station in Middletown. So we have balls of light, we have fireballs, we have discs. Um, they were all, and that's just in this tiny little area, from Middletown to Pine Bush that night. If we can extrapolate this to all over the Northeast, this was a stunning night, perhaps one of the most active nights in UFO history. Okay, there's a reason I put these pictures up. Stuart Whitman, famous actor. On the left, he's in the movie The Longest Day about D-Day, which is a fabulous movie. You should watch it. Here he is on the right with John Wayne in The Comancheros, a Western. And down below, he's a little bit older, but still gorgeous. He did a lot of TV shows. He was nominated. Oh, and the picture in the middle, I have no idea where that's from. Who cares? But yeah, ladies, you're welcome. Um, he was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actor. He was nominated for 6 Emmys, 6 Golden Globes. So he was an actor of some repute. Well, he was in a hotel room in New York City the night of the blackout, and he was stuck on the 12th floor. Remember, the elevators were not running in Manhattan. And he was asleep and said he was awakened by a whistling noise from outside his room. So he gets up, goes to the window. He said there are two UFOs outside the window. One of them was orange and the other was blue. I have to pause there a second because remember the Pine Bush sighting? That was a blue uh, ball. At both the Adam Beck and Syracuse, a lot of witnesses said they were seeing an orange ship and a blue ship. So that's very interesting. He's saying the same thing. They gave off a strange luminescent light, so I couldn't see if there were portholes or if there, who was in them. Then he goes on to this is where it gets a little weird. He said, then I heard them speaking in English to me as if they were on a loudspeaker. They spoke to me in English. It may have not been audible to anyone else. I was probably tuned into the right wavelength, whatever that means. They said they wanted to talk to me because I appeared to have no malice or hate in my soul. They said they were fearful of Earth because Earthlings were messing around with unknown quantities and might disrupt the balance of the universe on their planet. We hear this all the time that supposedly contactees say that the ETs are very nervous with Earthlings and their atomic bombs. So this fits a lot of other sightings. He then went on to say, they said the blackout was just a little demonstration of their power and that they could do a lot more with almost no effort. It served as a warning. They said they could not stop our whole planet. They could stop our whole planet from functioning. They asked me to do what I could to fight malice, prejudice, and hate on Earth, and then they took off. I felt elated. I wasn't even shocked. I was standing by the window and awake the entire time. I don't know why they picked me as a contact, but I'll swear off a Bible I saw them out there and that they talked to me. Okay, you can say he was dreaming, you can say he was drunk, whatever. Or maybe this exactly happened as he said it did. Certainly, it fits a lot of other scenarios, but if true, whoever this was came out and said, yeah, we caused the blackout. It was just a demonstration of their power. And certainly it fits the scenarios of all these UFOs seen at power stations before the power went out. So take it or leave it, but you have to at least acknowledge it's a possibility. Okay, why is this man pointing to his nose? This is Bob Schultz. He was an electrical engineer from Minnesota. Much later, he joined MUFON because a lot of basically what happened to him the night of the Great Blackout. He was on Long Island that night, Bethpage, New York, at Grumman Aircraft, and he was installing a new digital display. Now, today, that means nothing to anyone. In 1965, to get a digital display, that was a big deal. And he was the electrical engineer installing this. It was like, wow, high tech as you can get. So the power went out and he couldn't work anymore. So he went back to his hotel because this installing a digital display was going to like take a week. He went to his hotel and he went to bed and slept through the night, or so he thought. When he woke up, he had some breathing problems, particularly in one side of his nose, and had breathing problems ever since. Didn't really know what that was all about. And then 2 days later, he's walking through an office to get to where he was doing his work. And a very distraught looking woman, runs up to him at Grumman. And here's an odd question. She says, "Can I touch your nose?" He's like, "What?" And she's very agitated. "Can I touch your nose?" And he's like, "Okay. Okay, go ahead." So she runs her finger along the side of his nose, freaks out, runs out, and quits. Quits her job. She had a good job at Grumman, quits that day. What the heck is going on? She told a friend later, she goes, "I know him from somewhere, and if it's where I think, I don't want to have anything to do with him." Okay, is this woman just unbalanced? Or the night of the blackout, were they both taken somewhere? This is what he believes now. For 30 years, he couldn't know what to make of it. And then he heard a story where someone said they were somewhere and they recognized somebody and they couldn't remember where they were recognized. And then they had had similar abduction experiences and were taken the same night. So maybe she was just nuts, or maybe something more happened to him that night. He thought he went to the hotel and just went to bed. Okay. So 35 years later, he finally goes to a surgeon who did x-rays and a CT scan and asked him, "What was the previous surgery you had that caused all this scar tissue way up in your sinuses?" And he's like, "No, I never had any surgeries." And the surgeon's like, "Well, something happened up there because it looks like you had surgery and it left all this scar tissue. That's why you're having trouble breathing." And this all began the night of the blackout. And the surgeon told him he'd need more surgery to correct it, but it's so close to his brain, there were risks. So, of course, he said, I don't think so. It's not worth it. I've been putting up with it for 35 years. I'll just live with it. So he came to think, was I abducted that night? Is that why that woman at Grumman freaked out? Do I have an implant? So one day he is at a MUFON conference in 2005, and he's talking to Dr. Leo Sprinkle, who is very prominent in this field. And Sprinkle asks, is he's talking to him and he's like, by the way, do you have something in your nose? Again, what kind of question is this to ask someone? Um, and he's like, I don't know if I do. Maybe I do. And he goes, yeah, you were probably abducted. So Leo Sprinkle's story, uh, very famous man at the time, back then. He was a PhD psychologist. He did counseling, hypnosis, but he became fascinated with parapsychology and UFOs. And how does a psychologist get interested in all of this? Well, he said that under hypnosis, he recalled that in the fifth grade, he was taken aboard a spacecraft, was up there looking at the stars, and a tall man told him to learn and read and write really well so he could help others become aware someday. Okay, that's an interesting occurrence. Then in the fall of 1949, he's fully conscious. He and a friend, Joe Wagoner, they're walking across the campus at the University of Colorado in Boulder. And he said, we watched a flying saucer or daylight disc moving over the campus. So this was broad daylight. They see a flying saucer back in 1949. Okay. And here's the kicker. He tells Bob Schultz that during the Great Blackout, he was in upstate New York. Here we are, New York again, and said he was abducted and had an implant placed in his nose. He said, and Bob Schultz asked him, oh, what is it, a tracking device? And he just laughed and goes, they don't need tracking devices. They know where you are. He said, Sprinkle said, no, it's a programming device. You and I and hundreds of others that night were programmed to speak about and get out the information on ETs. Again, prominent scientist, this is quite the statement to make. I'm hoping to find Leo Sprinkle's papers. I'm hoping to find some of the cases he investigated that night. I've asked a couple of people, they had no idea about this, but it's one thing to say, yeah, I think I was abducted and I think you were, but hundreds of others the night of the Great Blackout. Um, Remarkable, and considering the source as well. So you see what's going on this night. Um, it's just, it really is one of the most fascinating nights in US history. All right, one more case I want to talk about. Hopefully Kathy is watching. Kathy Hager. Um, she gave me an amazing case back in Cornwall where some people were seeing a disc and some people were seeing a triangle. I have spoken about that here before. But she was living in Spark Hill Avenue in Tappan, New York. And here's a picture of her house. You can see all the second floor. There's no way anybody could be looking into a second floor window. It's great she had these photos of the actual house. And she said between 9:30 and 10 p.m. She's laying in bed and her window looked out to the Tappan Zee Bridge, which is now called the Cuomo Bridge. Um, but she said there were all these emergency vehicles and boats and planes. So there was all this activity around the bridge, and she didn't know what was going on. And she gets up to use the bathroom. Here's a picture of her back then. And this has to be terrifying. She hears a voice when she's in the bathroom, says, "Hello, and look over here." So she looks at the window and sees this looking in, what she described as like a lizard or a reptile. She made this fabulous sketch of what went on. She's in the bathroom. Uh, the wall, she said, suddenly looked like a lava lamp. And I hear this a lot where people say, like a wall or a ceiling starts rippling and they're taken through it or something comes in. And she's brought to a room with six beings that look like this. Um, this reptile guy there, and then the probably the most frightening aspect is that's a picture of her strapped to a table while there's instruments and lights and everything, and that something was being done to it. There's a lot more to this story. I'm just giving you the thumbnail of it, but this is a rather detailed and terrifying night. Again, the night of the big blackout that this happened. So, was it hundreds of people who went through this? Is this what Dr. Leo Sprinkle went through and remembered it? Is this what Bob Schultz went through and didn't remember it and really didn't want to go through uh hypnosis to remember it? That woman at Grumman, did this happen to her as well? Um, I don't know. So I'm hoping by talking about this, some people who were alive and had something strange happen to them will come forward. I think we need a database, a central database of all the UFO sightings, abduction reports, high strangeness, weirdness that went on that night. So, all the major magazines had coverage of it. The newspapers. I mean, this was obviously, 30 million people in the dark all that time. It was huge news. This fuzzy picture here of the man in the suit with a candle. This was NBC News. They were on emergency backup power, still broadcasting, but they didn't have any lights. They were broadcasting by candlelight that night. There are some clips that are on YouTube you can see. And of course, you have to have Doris Day in a movie a couple of years later. Where were you when the lights went out? So you have to turn it into a rom-com. But it really was a very big deal for a lot of people for many, many years, particularly if you were one of those stuck in an elevator or a subway for hours. You can imagine, just everybody had a story. Of course, my story was losing my marbles on the living room floor, but a lot of people had amazing stories that night. So the only question is, if you were old enough, where were you when the lights went out? If you're too young, ask your parents, ask your grandparents, because as you can see, more was going on and a few fuses blowing in the power grid. So that's my presentation. I hope you all learned something and are saying you had no idea that this was going on.
Yeah, that was wow. I am like completely blown away by this presentation, Linda. I didn't know anything about this and all of the sightings and high strangeness is really something to behold. So at this juncture, I'm going to turn it over to our audience. If you have any questions, please type it in the chat and I'll be able to relay this to Linda and if she can answer them to everybody. So if you have some questions, please put it in the chat now. I'll be happy to pass it on to Linda. We do have one question right now. Was totally unaware of this or any of the UFO connections. Same here. Is this popularized, Linda? Was this like something that was in the mainstream, or you had to have like a subscription to Popular Mechanics to really know about all the different things, or been in the area where they saw the fireballs, or they saw the blue and orange, spheres floating around and everything? If you can let us know about that, this was not a popular, you
It,
know, um,
yeah, there was in Popular Mechanics, McDonald did mention it. There were mentions of it, but you have to remember what the media was like treating UFOs even 20 years ago, let alone in the 60s. It would be mentioned, you would be labeled a crackpot, and let's move on. So I don't think anyone took it seriously enough at that point out of the UFO community to really press the issue. And it seems that the people in Syracuse knew about it. Hynek had a group of sightings. Sprinkle knew about it, but there wasn't, to my knowledge, here's the catalog of what went on that night. Nobody seems to have done a comprehensive deep dive into it.
Are there any books that give more detail, Linda, on this blackout?
There may be, not that I know of. There's a couple of articles, and of course, the same websites keep reprinting the same articles and things like that. But I spoke to a couple of people who are, I don't know if you can call them Leo Sprinkle experts, but really familiar with his work. And they are like, say what? He said he was abducted that night. And I'm like, yeah. So I'm hoping someone can get his papers I think are out in Colorado. So I'm not getting there anytime soon, but I'm hoping someone can go through his papers and that he has a big fat file of all of the cases he studied from that night.
Well, if this happens and you're able to get your hands on them, please, maybe this could be a future book idea for you, Linda, because you're such a great researcher, and I know this was like such a great presentation. I'm sure you can fully, go into detail on a big book about this incident because this
Oh,
this is completely phenomenal that I had never even heard about this except for, the New York blackout, but this was completely out of left field. I didn't know any of this stuff.
yeah. A lot of this was, news to me. As I said, I knew there were UFOs seen over the power plants, but the abductions, the sightings all over the place. Yeah, so I am on it. I am I would love to this time next year hold up. Well, here's my
And we would
blackout.
be happy to have you here at the Danbury Library doing a book talk in person.
It's a date. It's a date.
Awesome. Another question. If our parents or grandparents have any anecdotal evidence from this night or others, how can we share them with you, Linda?
I'm happy to give you my email, which is Linda Zim at optonline.net. That's LINDAZIM at OPTonline.net.
Great, thank you. If you didn't get that down, just know that this will be uploaded onto the Danbury Library YouTube channel sometime towards the end of this month. So
Yes, please. If it
yeah,
was a
please.
sighting, if it was lights in the sky, if grandma disappeared for 2 hours and please.
Want to know?
Yes, absolutely.
Another question. When I was reading Incident at Exeter, many sightings were over power lines. John Fuller seems to think that there was a connection between UFOs and power lines. Do you think that these UFOs were using the power lines, or do you think it was some sort of display of their, power, like what the Hollywood actor was saying from his messages that he was getting from the ETs?
Yeah, clearly there is a connection between UFOs and power lines. Some people say it's almost like they're surfing the energy. They can draw energy. And there are cases where there's a sudden dip in the power when they're over the lines, as if they're somehow drawing it. I think that in the case of the 65 blackout, however, this was a deliberate act to shut down the power grid. I mean, 1,000,000 kilowatts like that, um, it's like they put a surge into the system to trip it all, overload it. So I think they can both utilize it and shut it down.
One last question. Were the UFOs only orbs?
No, there was that flying saucer over the train station in Middletown, New York, and some of the New York City sightings were craft. So there certainly was craft as well. The hour before in Pennsylvania, those two commercial pilots saw two shiny discs being chased by the military craft. So there were discs, there were balls of fire, there were red and there were orange and blue orbs, and probably a lot of other things. So I want to hear those stories. If you find any newspaper clippings, anybody, or like I said, anything, please pass it on.
Yes, definitely. And there was another, Northeast blackout in 1977. Any thoughts on whether the ETs came back for another demo?
It's possible. I haven't heard any reports from that one. But maybe that's something I need to. And then when was it about 2017 or something? Wasn't there
Yep,
enough?
yep,
So
yep.
yeah. So this is my first time giving this presentation. I've been working for a couple of months on this. So now that I've got it. It's in the can. Now I'm going to expand and try to find out if I can tie it into any other blackouts and, of course, get more information on this.
Yes, this is definitely something to pursue. I think this is a great, you know, um, subject to, expand and find out more about, because I think this is, completely fascinating. Can you talk a little bit about the speculation regarding the relationships between UFOs and stone chambers?
Oh, yes. Many sightings over the years of the giant triangles and other craft hovering over the stone chambers in the Hudson Valley area. And I th- I think that, a lot of these chambers are built on unusual magnetic fields. People have mapped them out. There's like strange patterns, strong magnetic fields. I think the UFOs can utilize that somehow. So I don't know that, oh, they're saying, hey, look at that cool stone chamber. I think they're there because of the magnetic fields. That's just my speculation.
Great. I believe that's pretty much. Oh, actually, we have one more question. See, this is great. Anyway, it's basically folks saying thank you. This is an excellent presentation. Linda, thank you so much. And thank you for all of you for joining us in our kickoff presentation. Please tune in tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we're going to have Danbury local legend and punk impresario Malcolm Tent joining us for the first time ever at the Western Connecticut UFO Conference. And on behalf of the Friends of the Danbury Library and the Danbury Library, thank you, and we'll see you again very, very soon. And thank you, Linda.
Thank you. It was
Have a great night,
fun.
everyone.